Loma Linda.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Here at U-Turn Radio, we believe in big-hearted communities and small government. Join your hosts, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman, as we work to put local governments on a diet and champion the charities that support your community. So come on, join us and let's turn it around.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Happy Sunday. Beautiful day today. Feels really hot. We definitely know summer's still here.
Yeah, it hadn't given up yet.
Absolutely not. And football season started. So if you're not watching football, I hope you're really joining us. Like our intro said, we believe in big-hearted communities and small governments. We are certain that the Inland Empire is big-hearted because we see it each week. And we also believe local governments are way too big and growing. So let's join us and turn it around.
Yeah, and that's what today's show is about. A county division or department that is growing and growing substantially, and that's our topic.
Absolutely, and this is part 2 to part 1 that we had last week. Last week we had a really informative show, really good show about the fire department, and the show title was County Fire I Protest, part 1, and this is part 2. So
Right.
in part 1, we described, or we kind of touched that the fire department here in the Inland Empire is down 10% in their budget. And if we calculate that into millions, it's $29 million.
Yeah, that's our shortfall. And remember, we kind of our analogy was that's a stack of dollar bills. It's almost as high as Mount Baldy.
Yeah, that I can only imagine that. Can you? I mean,
And that's just their deficit. That's not like their total budget.
right. So we concentrated on like the how they kind of got there. And today we're going to kind of go into the why, right?
Yeah, that's our goal.
So we're going to break up the why. But before we get that, if this is your first time tuning in to U-Turn Radio, if any of our callers call in 909-792-5222, that's 909-792-5222, we would love to donate money to your favorite charity working here in the Inland Empire. If you work with one as well, you're more than welcome to call and let us know what you guys do. We would love to do our part and help out the community and donate some money. And you can win a lot of money here, from hundreds to thousands of dollars. We've given out over $6,000, or actually $6,400 last time I checked, just to be correct. And you can win from $100, $200 to $1,500. We've given away $1,300 just from one person calling and talking about their favorite charity or a charity that they work in.
Yeah. So if you have a charity, give us a call, and we'll spin the dial and see what you win for your local charity.
That's right. And the phone number one more time is 909-792-5222. And you can also email us at info@uturnradio.com. If you have any questions, concerns, or if you just want to share something with us off the air, you can definitely email us. Or you can check out our past episodes at www.uturnradio.com, where you can also find the part 1 to the second part that we're having today. And like I said, it's County Fire I Protest part 2. The first one, you can find it on our website, uturnradio.com.
Right. So to get into this, the story of I Protest 2, we're talking about the why. And we're going to start a little bit with a little bit more of a deep dive into the County Fire's proposed budget for the year. We talked about their shortfalls, $29 million. Their total budget is $277 million.
So their total budget is $200 and what you said?
$277 million.
$77.
Yeah.
Or
$1
million. Let's correct that.
Yeah. Which is that's a $17 million increase from last year, which over the past 8 years, their budget's gone up 78% or 76%, kind of depends on how you do math, but gone up like from $140 million 8 years ago to that $277 million request this year, which is if you look at the rate of inflation, which is over that time is about 10%, they're growing at almost 700% over the rate of times the rate of inflation.
Okay, so let's to break this down, they're growing more than what the people are like. They're, as a company, if I could say that, right? As a company, they're growing more than what the people are coming into living in the area.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If we break it down that way, right?
A better way to, I guess, state that is in 2008, if you had $100 to spend on groceries, let's say.
Okay.
Over the 10% inflation over the last 8 years, your $100 would now be worth $92.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So to keep up with that rate, so another way to state it would be, it'd be reasonable if your budget was $146 million 8 years ago, for your budget now to be $146 billion plus 10%, so another $14 million. Because then you're sticking with your budget and you're keeping right with the rate of inflation.
Right.
Because things do cost.
Like it kind of balances out a little bit better.
Yeah. But County Fire's budget is grown, like I said, close to 700 times that amount.
In 1 year.
No,
in 8 years. A total of 8 years.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So
that's still a lot if you.
Oh yeah, you look at the numbers, you're like, well, something's going on there,
right?
You know? And here's kind of what's going on. We're going to play a clip, and it's about a 2-minute clip, and it's a collage. It's kind of a breakdown of high points from the fire chief's testimony not testimony, that sounds like he's being tried, his budget presentation. So every year he comes and sits down, actually it's more than that, but every June he comes and sits down with the Board of Supervisors and says, okay, here's what's going to cost to run county fire this year. And what we're going to hear from Joe, our engineer, is a clip, and like I said, it's a collage. I've edited some things. I haven't added.
It's the highlights of that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's play that.
This is a public hearing of San Bernardino County Fire Protection District 2018-19 recommended budget. We're going to open the hearing. Chief Hartwick, Chief Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Board of Supervisors, which also act as the fire board for the Fire Protection District. What I want to draw your attention to is last year's budget of $258 million was increased this year by $17.9 million to $276 million. I will tell you, and I'm in a position again this year that I was in last year that I think we were completely trying to avoid, but it's the use of $11 million, actually closer to $12 million as you see 2/3 down the page in reserves and funds. I think it is important to note that even though our budget is going up $17 million this year, the service levels are remaining the same. Today I'm asking you to consider some options as we move forward within the fire district. I would like to add perhaps just a little bit of background. When I was hired over 7 years ago now, I was asked by the CEO at that point to reduce the reliance as best we could on the general fund. Essentially, if there was any way that we could, as a fire district, come up with options to the county as a way to minimize their investment in the fire district to do that. And we've talked about a few things over the years. One of the things we talk about is the expansion of a FP5 service zone. There are currently 10 special tax service zones within the county, voter-approved special tax service zones. FP5 is the largest or the most people included within it. The fire district, the board of the fire district can expand that service zone to maintain or improve services within the county fire district. That expansion would generate roughly $26 million, almost $27 million now based on the current level of that voter-approved special tax. And we would recommend the protest process to give, again, some measuring stick to you as a fire board. The other option, and probably goes without having to draw too much attention to it, it's rather obvious. We could reduce the services provided in the district to the revenues that we receive from the district. And then, of course, we can, and this is the path that we've taken to this point in the 7 years that I've been here, and that's expand the MOU with the county each year and deliberate on that each year to maintain current service levels.
Okay, so a couple questions for you as we come out of that. Who's ultimately responsible for this thing for the county fire and his budget?
The chief, right? Or chief.
Well, right at the beginning there, he makes a statement and he says the county fire board, which is actually the board of supervisors.
Oh,
so does that make sense?
That responsibility. So what you're saying is that the responsibility of the budget of the fire budget comes down to the supervisors.
Exactly.
Not necessarily him.
Bingo. You got.
Okay, so this is good. This is really good because this whole time I thought that they were kind of like responsible for the budget, and like he said, also from what we just heard, he said they want to raise 17 million. But keep the same services.
Bingo.
And then I'm just like, wait, hold on. What do you mean you want to go up 17 mil, but keep the same service? That doesn't make sense. Or maybe I feel like it's a little bit unfair. Let's see where this money is really going and if it's needed. But something that I think that was really important that I didn't know, because I was just going to say, well, if he can't stay within his budget, maybe he should be a little bit more responsible with his pay rate. Like they could, like for example, if you do good at work, and you go over your budget, or you make your budget and more, sometimes as a manager you get a bonus, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, well, because I really thought the responsibility was his. I was gonna say, well, if there's maybe a little bit of more pressure on him, he would care more about like the budget. But like you just clarified, it's not necessarily his control; it's the supervisors.
Exactly. To be clear, he is responsible for the budget in terms of creating it, maintaining it, driving it, make sure he stays within his parameters. But budget approval,
right?
The actual how's this gonna that belongs to the board of supervisors. So anyway, so in terms of who actually signs off on the budget, I believe it is. At the end of the day, it's the board of supervisors.
So there's still a huge responsibility under like him, but mainly like the supervisors, because they're giving at the end of the day the green light to spend or not to spend, or to maybe overlook or revise, I should say, the budget.
Yeah, and particularly in this situation, he's going to the board of supervisors, and if you will, he has tax money. And when I say he, the county fire, the director of county fire has tax money. He has money coming to his district. So I'm going to kind of qualify a little bit of what we said. It can be kind of complicated. I'm not even sure I understand it.
Okay, let's try this out.
But actually, let's go ahead and move on, because we're getting kind of wrapped around maybe some detail that really isn't, in my opinion, isn't that particularly important, because the bottom line is this is $277 million that's being spent out of the county's budget for fire services, with a substantial increase in the amount that they're doing over the past 8 years, and we haven't even hit the why yet.
Right. Which I think, is it, and this could be the why. Like, right now I'm assuming a lot of different whys. Like, is the budget too small? Even though when you say 277 million, I think that's a lot of money. But is it, I don't know. I'm thinking like big county, a lot of people. Could it be that it's too small? Is it that they're not really reviewing the budget properly? Are they really overspending? There could be so many different whys. Right. And that's what we're breaking down today, right?
Yeah. And there are lots and lots of whys. And what I did was kind of pick out some.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And without a doubt, the major why is the growth of county fire and their responsibilities. So since 2015, they've picked up responsibility for the city of San Bernardino. So San Bernardino had a city fire department, 138 years old, and due to some budget issues, they went bankrupt in 2012. We'll get into that a little bit later. But County Fire took on responsibility for the entire city's fire services. So that's one city. 29 Palms, for a number of years, 29 Palms got fire services via the water district out there.
Okay.
And over the same period of time, 29, the water district punted over, said, okay, County Fire, you go ahead and take on this duty. And then Upland and San Antonio Heights, which we've talked about a little bit before, in 2015, they were all annexed into County Fire's area of responsibility. And then Hesperia. So you have a substantial city, Upland, down in the Valley region, they call it. And then you have Hesperia up in the North Desert region. You have 29 Palms over in the South Desert region. And what was the last one I said? Oh, and I forgot to mention Needles out on the border. They took on also Needles.
So they took on all these different cities,
Mm-hmm.
and then that would fall under their budget.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's an issue of growth
Right.
on one hand, right? They're taking on more responsibility.
So then what happens with what they used to have? Like, for example, like the fire station with Upland and those, if San Bernardino is taking over,
yeah,
they just changed like the whole
exactly
dynamic of what they had
if you-
going on?
This is done via what they call a LAFCO process. No, it's not. I don't know about the dynamics, but basically they come in and say, okay, San Bernardino City, we're going to repaint your fire engine and it's going to say San Bernardino County. It's probably not that straightforward, but yeah, I mean, basically and the firefighters that were working in San Bernardino City just became employees of San Bernardino County. They just get transferred over. So you can see as part of that process, budget is going to have to grow, right?
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to ask is like if the budget grows here in San Bernardino because of what you just explained, these different cities, fire stations go under them, so that means more employees because they already had their job. But what happens with the budget that they had before they became under San Bernardino?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it has, and this is a lot of the why in terms of kind of the politics behind it. And this is a little bit speculative on my part, but we hit this a little bit. But if you're the city of San Bernardino, I'm going to use a different city as an example. You're the Hesperia,
Mm-hmm.
and you're running a fire department, right?
Okay,
So that costs money,
of course.
right? If you have an opportunity to offload that to somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and you can use a process where not only you offload it, but you can also, as part of that offloading, a fee can be imposed on the residents.
For transferring over?
Yeah, what happens? What typically happens during this LAFCO process is County Fire says, okay, Needles, we'll go ahead and take on your fire services. Actually, that's not a good example. 29 Palms, we'll go ahead and take on your fire services. But as part of that, we're going to add this fee, yearly fee to your tax bill for 100, anywhere $150, $106 around like.
And where does that money come from?
That now comes everything comes out of the citizens' pockets, right?
Right.
But before, it was coming out of the citizens' pocket via their property tax.
Right.
So you had to stroke a check for property tax once. It's actually I think 3 or 4 times a year, and they take part of that money and give it to the local fire department to do what they do. Right.
Right. Which that was already like normal. That was just
Yeah,
regular
that's
process.
normal. That's
normal.
kind of okay.
Yeah.
So LAFCO process, here, now it's county fire. It's your responsibility. What we're going to do is we're going to give county fire some of that property tax.
But not all of it.
But not all of it. We're also going to add on this direct fee, if you will, from the citizens, and that's going to go to county fire. So maybe another way to put it, let's say you spend $100 on property taxes. Mm-hmm. Once the responsibility for fire has transferred, you're still paying $100 for
right.
property taxes.
Because that's just normal,
right? Okay.
Right. Yep.
Let's say your fire tax that they add is $10.
So now I'm at $110.
Yeah. Now you're paying $110, right? The needle or the city is still getting their $100 worth of property taxes, right?
Right.
And the county, or a better way to say it is, they're getting part of their property taxes, and then the county is getting both the fee that comes along with some of the property taxes. I know that's a little confusing, but that's essentially how it works out.
Well, not that it just works out that way, but because that's we heard it in the audio, the services stay the same too.
Oh yeah. There's
nothing new with those $10 extra that you would be paying that they're adding on for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, as you probably remember, my background is in an organization that's a bit like County Fire in that it is Coast Guard. It's a respond to emergencies type thing.
Right.
And let me say the folks on the front line, the folks in the fire department, the folks going to the fires, the folks responding to car wrecks and heart attacks and that type of thing. Those people are the most dedicated, giving, outstanding people in the world in terms of what they do. But there's a bureaucratic system that supports those people, and they just have different incentives. And so what the Coast Guard would do would be at the national level would be, well, if you're going to cut my budget, here's the services you're going to lose.
And they would cut them down.
We're going to have to close this air station. We're going to have to close. We're going to have to keep ships tied to the dock for this long.
Right.
It's an immediate response that we're going to have to cut services because there's nothing kind of forcing them to say, okay, well maybe we can be more efficient. Maybe we can restructure pay. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, not even restructure your pay, because I think if I were to be an employee, if I were to be an employee, I wouldn't want them to cut my pay. But I think there's different ways of restructuring budget where it doesn't affect, because at the end of the day, the firefighters are the ones going out there and helping out. But like you said, there's the other people that had different incentives and are using the budget maybe not in the right ways or in the right forms maybe.
It's not so, and we'll talk about this, I think, in the next section. It's not so much a right or wrong thing. It's an incentive thing. It's what drives somebody in a large bureaucracy that's not an elected official. What's important to them, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just an incentive thing. It's what's important to them.
And it could be different for every different department.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's not money.
Yeah.
If you will, the private sector, typically money is a pretty important driver. If you're a business owner, you want to increase your profit.
Absolutely.
But in the public sector, that can't be really your driver, because your pay raises are all laid out. It's all time and grade, and as long as you do your job, show up and don't get in trouble,
right,
over a certain amount of time, you're going to get that pay raise. So there isn't really anything in that system where it's like, wow, if I do this, I can make another $100,000 a year.
Right. It works a little different than what
Yeah,
other businesses would run like, for example.
Yeah, exactly. The incentives are just different.
All right, so let's go into a break. After the break, we will spend more time with the why. What are the reasons why county fire is growing nearly 700% the rest of inflation? We will try and explain that when we get back here on U-Turn Radio.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away.
How would you feel if you had to make a choice between buying food or spending your fixed income on life-saving medicine? No one should make that trade-off, but many low-income seniors are forced into difficult decisions like this every day. Smiles for Seniors Foundation provides energy assistance and safety net services to struggling low-income seniors in the Inland Empire. They provide one-time assistance to seniors to meet specific financial needs. They've helped with food, housing, utility payments, minor home and auto repairs, along with life-saving prescriptions or medical equipment. A nonprofit foundation funded entirely by donations from local organizations. Smiles for Seniors receives no funding from the state or federal government. They are funded by local businesses and individuals like you with big hearts and willing wallets. You can find more information or to donate to Smile for Seniors at 909-790-6671. That's 909-790-6671, or visit smilesforseniorsfoundation.org. That's smilesforseniorsfoundation.org.
Support the San Bernardino City Mission. Your donations help feed the hungry, provide used clothing for low-income families, provide access to housing and rehabilitation for the homeless, and help all who come to them for help. The mission provides a personalized assistance program for homeless men and homeless women and children. They help get less fortunate off the streets, place them in safe shelters, and get them back on their feet. Last month, the community helped provide over 7,400 meals and provided nearly 2,000 pieces of clothing, as well as almost 180 hygiene kits, which were provided for the needy. San Bernardino City Mission goes above and beyond, though, providing personal counsel, prayer, and a devotion time to encourage those in need in their spiritual life. So listen up, everyone. For a donation of just $1.57, you can feed a hungry person right here in San Bernardino. $15.70 will feed 10 people, and $157 will feed 100 hurting men, women, and children. If you're interested in helping and want to know more additional information, you can go to sanbernardinocitymission.org or call 909-649-0011. 909-649-0011. The San Bernardino City Mission, feeding the hungry, helping the homeless. That number again, 909-649-0011. Or visit them online, sanbernardinocitymission.org.
You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. The time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose, and our love become a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn Radio Show right here on KCAA.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio. Before the commercial break, we were covering the San Bernardino County Fire has a $29 million hole in its budget. Last week we covered the how, and today we're covering the why. And at the beginning of the show, we try to cover part of the why.
It was rough sledding. It can be pretty complicated in terms of that LAFCO process and how a community walks out of that. You have everything from Hesperia, which actually walked out of it in they had a pretty good deal. And then you had San Bernardino City that had a really bad deal. If I were the city, I'd call it a very bad deal coming out of it. So anyway, it can be complicated. But the takeaways are, A, County Fire is growing. Their responsibilities are growing, and therefore their budget is growing.
And it's growing because they undertook different cities under their budget.
Right. And now, so you have this FP5 proposal where they propose to grow even more.
FP5, what does FP stand for?
Fire Protection District 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the major point from the last section. Maybe a couple other pieces of data to kind of throw there. Total staffing over that 8-year period, it's up 12%. So that's a plus up of 102 employees. But interestingly, during that time, the Valley region, which is essentially Upland, Ontario, Upland, Fontana, and San Bernardino City, some other areas, their total positions went up 238. And
it went up again because they took all these other employees that already existed in these other areas, right? Right? So that's why it's not like it's a new hiring process. It is a new hiring process because they're taking in people, but those people were already in their role prior to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's not really hiring; it's just a transfer of
a transition to the new.
But so they've gone up 238, but overall staffing's only gone up 102. So there's a delta in there where somebody has lost positions.
Right.
And if you look at it, the North Desert region, which is that vast kind of region all the way up to Kern County and out to Nevada, there's been a decrease, I think, of 64 positions in that area. South Desert, I think, there's been a decrease of 33 positions, and then the Mountain Regional, they've had a decrease of 11. And then in the Valley region, like I said, it's up 135 in the Valley region, and then 103 for administration. So you get this transfer of resources, if you will, where the desert regions, which these are the regions that are primarily going to be taxed, if you will, with this FP5 expansion, they're slowly getting drained resources out there. There aren't as many fire people out there. There are more fire people down here in the Valley region. But the place that's going to get taxed?
Right. There's less. So in other words, it's going to increase if people don't vote. Right.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. And for the people that don't know, the voting part is going to happen September 14th. We covered this last show. If you go to www.uturnradio.com and go under County Fire, I Protest Part 1, we broke down the process of the FP5, which is pretty much they are going to increase these areas as far as tax, but they're going to keep the same services. Right?
Yep.
However, what they're doing, from my understanding, how we covered it last week, is that they're going to send out a letter September 14th where they're going to pretty much have the citizens vote on it if they want to or not. But if they don't send it back, that vote counts as a thumbs up. I'm okay with you guys raising this tax, which becomes the fee of the FP5 increase.
The best way I've heard it stated is the county assumes you vote yes.
Correct.
Unless you actually fill out the thing and turn it in and check the no part, and you have all your signatures.
However, there's a second part, and I don't want to go too much into details because, like I said, we covered that last show, and you could definitely find that on uturnradio.com. And depending on how much land you have, that's how good your vote also makes a difference or an impact to raising that tax fee.
It's tied to 25% not only of the owners that vote, but also to the value of their property. And so let's say 25% of the people actually voted no.
Right.
But it was all people that own very small plots.
Right.
It still would not pass because the value of the assessed property would be less than 25%.
Right.
So there's two hurdles
that you kind of have to go through to make a difference and not let that fee go up.
Yeah.
In other words, or happen.
Like the Sentinel said, as far as they know, in an article where they said, as far as we know, nothing has ever, if you will, knowed out of the protest process.
That's why U-Turn Radio is so important, because we give you knowledge that you probably wouldn't have been aware of, because I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware of a letter going out September 14th and trying to make a difference for those fees to happen, or not to happen.
Yeah.
Say.
So that's, if you will, from the last point, the last section. The point is their responsibilities are growing, their budgets are growing. Now we're gonna kind of, and it's growing huge.
Right.
And they're proposing, the way they're financing it is not only collecting some property taxes from the cities they're annexing, but they're, like the FPF 5 fee, they're adding on $150, et cetera, per month to folks in the unincorporated area if this thing passes. So that's kind of the why, if you will. There's the money problem that the fire district has to solve.
Which is a $29 million in the hole.
Right. And this year, the way they cover it is, you heard at that clip at the beginning, the fire chief's going to dip into his savings, his reserves for, I think it was 12 million. And then the Board of Supervisors is going to dip into the general fund for the remainder.
To balance it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll cover, if you will, that hole in the budget. And his whole case is we shouldn't have to have the county dip into the general fund to do this.
Right.
And in fact, 7 years ago when I took the job, the CEO that was there at the time told me, hey, figure out a way for you to get more money so I don't have to spend my money. That's essentially.
Well, that kind of makes sense, right? I mean,
it
it's
does.
like when you take on a responsibility, maybe like a new job, a new position, where it's like, hey, try to figure out.
It absolutely makes sense from the perspective of the bureaucrat.
Right.
Okay. It does not make sense from the perspective of the tax-paying citizen. Not the
citizen, right? But I guess from that perspective, from them, it makes sense. Like, hey, figure it out. Obviously, the figuring out part sometimes comes, and it's bad for us citizens, because we're the ones that end up paying.
And not only is it bad for us, California law consistently since Prop 13 to 18, we talked about a little bit last time, has been, bottom line, citizens should be able to vote on tax increases and fee increases, the way they're defined. Citizens should be able to vote on that. But over and over again, over the past 40 years, you see California government, figuring out a way around that requirement in the law.
Like the one we just explained, which kind of like almost sounds sneaky a little bit, if you ask me, my personal opinion. It's just a little sneaky. Like, it's like, yeah, you could vote, but there's a second part to this. Exactly. So it's a little tricky there.
And Supervisor Rutherford, in her comment during that, which we didn't play, but her point was, hey, this happened last year in my district, and the citizens were really angry. We need to put this for a straight yes/no vote. Yeah. But there's some reasons why they didn't want to do that, and we can kind of get into those as we move along. There's a couple other whys, and these are a little more speculative. what I call the why of the size of the empire.
The what?
The size of the empire.
Why you call it the why?
Yeah. Remember how before the break we talked a little bit about what motivates people in a bureaucratic system?
They're incentives, right?
Yeah, they're incentives. And one of the incentives for a person in a bureaucrat, especially a high-level official, if you will, like the fire chiefs are, one of the incentives in a bureaucratic system, again, it's not particularly money because your pay raises and all that, what you actually bring home is laid out, and it's not a huge deal. So in that bureaucratic system where your pay raises are already laid out, what becomes more important is power and control. And in this case, what this FP5 extension, if you will, allows, not even just the extension, but the gobbling up of fire services in the county, it allows, the people in the fire bureaucracy to kind of say, man, look at this. And these are rough numbers, but our fire district we are directly responsible for this huge area, rough order of magnitude, 16,000 square miles that we're directly providing fire services.
Right.
So it would exclude like Rancho Cucamonga because they don't have their own fire department. But it's like a, oh yeah, man. I mean, this is huge. This
is really like interesting to me because I mean, for me, sometimes like my drive would be power if we're talking about work, right? I mean, I'm sorry, money. It'd be like, I want to make more money. So I want to, here, like you said, they already have a certain amount that they make, but their drive is more of the power, which I would think that when you're in these positions, you would think that it would just be like wanting to help out the community and just be good, like.
Yeah, we all have mixed motives.
Right.
And absolutely, there's a part of every what I'll call incident responder, Coast Guardman, fire ambulance, even somebody in an emergency room. There's part of them that they're just there to do good.
Right.
And we applaud that, and we celebrate that. But you also have part of you that's driven by other things. And in every organization, you get driven by what you control and what you know what I'm saying?
Because where the power and the control comes in.
Yeah. And just the size of this thing, the fire chief now, if you will, once this is all said and done, if it's said and done, this is a huge area. It's larger than 9 states. There are 9 states in the United States that are smaller than the county of San Bernardino and how big this FP5 area alone is.
Well, I could see the power in there saying, hey, this is a county that is as big as like 9 different states. So I could see where that power can come in, that part. Sure.
Okay, so there's so size and control can really become a motivator in a bureaucratic system. And then another motivator, which I kind of call the not so benevolent conqueror, which that may be a little unfair, but anyway, the idea is we're going to take care of our own. We're going to take care of the brotherhood, and you, the citizens, are going to pay for it. And San Bernardino City, we talked about them a little earlier, is I think a really good example of this.
Because?
Well, so the San Bernardino City filed for bankruptcy, I think it was in 2012.
Right.
Right?
We covered that.
How long do you think it took them to get out of bankruptcy?
I don't know. Usually it takes people a long time, I feel like. So I'm trying to... 5 years?
5 years.
I would definitely say at least 10.
It took them 5 years to get out of bankruptcy. Guess what happened the year before they got out of bankruptcy?
Their budget went up?
Or
it grew?
No, actually it shrunk.
Really?
Yeah.
So they were able to pay more, get out of it?
No, they ported over.
Oh, that's right. The other cities. Yeah. That makes sense. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they offloaded this huge public safety bill to the county.
Gotcha.
So now their balance sheet's looking better. So they were they were able to get out of bankruptcy, and you know, it wasn't only, but a large driver for that was they didn't have this big fire services bill on their balance sheet anymore. It was now the counties. But now they had to give something up to do that, right? So, and we talked a little bit about Hesperia got a pretty good deal out of LAFCO, right. San Bernardino City, maybe not so much. According to an article I read, they San Bernardino City, now all of their property tax goes to county fire to pay for county services. Mm-hmm. So every piece of property, you know, 1% Howard driver's tax, all of that money goes to county fire. And that's not all of the pie. In addition to that, 1/3 of the vehicle license fee property tax, which is, you know, when you go to the DMV, I think they collect part of that. So 1/3 of that should go to the city is going to the county.
Wow.
And oh, by the way, every property owner in San Bernardino City, which we know is not necessarily there's not a lot of money out in San Bernardino City.
Right.
$148 per parcel.
That's insane. That makes me also think, for example, just for us, the youth that are trying to I just try to think the day that I want to buy my home or these things, when we talk about budgets like this, that it's already, I mean, counties are for example, the fire departments in the whole for $29 million, they're getting money from different places. Obviously, at the end of the day, us citizens are the ones that are paying more. But for the youth that is trying to build their career and try to buy a little condo or buy something, it just becomes so much harder because everything ends up piling up, different fees that we have to deal with already. So it almost seems like we have to keep working so much harder to try to buy something.
That's a great point, and that's one of the drivers behind kind of this show is to speak, if you will, to your generation. I don't mean that condescendingly, but to try to wake your generation up, if you will, right. or educate, become aware of the substantial liabilities that are being collected and will be transferred to their backs.
Absolutely. The more that we keep breaking these different things up, it all comes down to the citizens having to pay more. So then, the DMV, I've experienced that. It was a higher fee from the year before, and it's the same car, which I didn't understand, and they couldn't explain it to me. So it's one of those things. It's well, if I have to get another job to keep with the fees and just the regular things that you have to pay, because if you don't pay the DMV, obviously you can't drive those type of things. But then we keep adding on different things, for example, even because let's say if I don't own anything in it, but if I rent, my rent is also gonna go up. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So it's when am I going to be able to save enough money to try to buy something for myself growing up, or coming up?
I totally agree with you. And that's the message for, if you will, from anybody who's 18 years old up to 45 right now is California in general and local governments are collecting debts that are going to come due on your backs.
And it seems like it's just going to be higher and higher and higher, which it becomes frustrating.
And one of the things that I guess a subcomponent, as a part of this San Bernardino City thing was, so the city went into bankruptcy, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what happens to a city with their pension liabilities in bankruptcy? That's I don't know.
No, it does happen.
Well, typically pension liabilities have been sacrosanct. It doesn't matter, you got to pay them. You know what I'm saying? If you look at California law, but what happened is Stockton went bankrupt a while back, and the judge in that case said, no, pension liabilities are on the table.
Oh, wow.
In other words, an example might be is a city goes into bankruptcy and they come out, and one of the things they do is instead of paying 100% of the pension promises, we're going to pay 50%. So now the pensionees, or if you will, are getting paid 50 cents on the dollar of what they expected. Okay, so
Right.
as an employee or as a city employee or a fire employee, I would not. You know what I'm saying? That's
You'd
a
be upset.
nasty scenario.
Yeah, it's
right?
just be like, what? You're tapping into my retirement money.
Yeah, exactly. So San Bernardino City is in bankruptcy. There's this court decision by the Stockton judge that's out there, and now this is where it becomes speculative on my part.
Okay.
But I can imagine the Brotherhood of Fire folks kind of sitting together and saying, you know, the guys in the city going, hey, what's going to happen to us and our pensions?
Yeah.
And the brother going, we're going to take care of you, and here's how we're going to do it.
Let's hear it.
138-year-old fire department, you know, that the city is run for 108 years. We're going to go ahead and take care of that. We're going to take you over into the county. You'll get switched over as a county employee. You'll be covered by the county MOU, and that's going to protect your pension.
And MOU is?
A memorandum of understanding. It's agreement between the county and their employee unions. So
Got it.
In this case, it's an agreement between the county and their fire department. So all these guys and gals that are working for the city are now working for the county, and their pension is now protected from that bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy.
Yeah. Now, San Bernardino County or city decided that they left pensions alone as they exited bankruptcy. They didn't want to, I guess, test the waters in terms of that decision.
Right.
But my point is, one of the reasons that fire is growing is maybe not so much a civic obligation or a let's go rescue people obligation. It's I got to take my brother fire people.
Right.
Because I don't, you know what I'm saying? They're down there in San Bernardino City. Pensions are under some threat there. So let's go ahead and LAFCO these people in, and we got them covered.
And we take care of them. I think it's so interesting, and it just happens with everything. But usually when we feel threatened by something that's going to be taken away from us, I feel like when we start maybe taking more action or try to take different action. In this case, county was like, don't worry about it. Come under our wing. You're good. But I mean, it's
yeah, and I have no.
It would be so interesting
that's
to see.
Purely speculative,
right? But it would be so interesting to see if that really did happen. If their pension were really tapped into, what would happen? What would I wonder what would come out of that? You know.
Well, you know, and maybe an important thing to say. I'm actually not going to answer your question. We're getting close to it, and I do want to say this is, man, I feel for retirees and employees that are working in the government system, where, you know, you've been working 10, 20, 30 years and you've been promised this retirement.
Right.
And now there's this huge amount of noise about, hey, we're not going to be able to afford this. You know what I'm saying? Because
now.
I mean, I'm a federal retiree, so it's the same thing. I feel for them. So, and the problem is not particular. Part of the issue is it's not greedy fire people on the front lines.
Right.
It's politicians making promises that they know
false.
We can't keep this, or it's a benefit. Yeah, I'll just hand this out because the due's going to come bill, or the bill's going to come due 20 years down the road.
And they're not going to be in that position anymore.
Yeah.
So then guess who's going to be stuck with it? Young people like myself, us.
Yeah.
Technically.
It's really interesting, and to I guess close this thing up, folks, I don't know what you believe or what you think about it, but we definitely think you ought to vote no if you live in the unincorporated areas of the county. Fill that thing out and send it in, primarily to drive it to a straightforward up-down yes-no vote.
And that letter is coming out September 14th, so be on the lookout. And if you have an opinion, feel free to call us next Sunday here on U-Turn Radio.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Big day in the NFL.